Oh, and here we are.
Here we are. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to yet another episode of Contact Lost, the best Polish English speaking podcast out there about Warhammer 40k. I'm your host, Tweak. With me, my co host, my good friend, Joker. How are you, buddy?
Hey guys, I'm okay. I'm okay. It's a bit busy, a bit too busy to my liking recently, but it is what it is.
Is it busy hobby wise or is it busy life
And
wise?
no, it's a bit busy life-wise, although
Mm,
also hobby-wise. I did manage to attend an event last week, so that's always fun
yeah,
to do.
we've seen.
Yeah, I actually did manage to do some content, although not much, less than I thought I would be, because all my games run to time essentially.
Mm,
Luckily, that didn't mean any issues in like resolving them or
hmm
whatnot, but unfortunately, it did mean that my time for creative side gigs was very much limited.
Yep, I must admit that I always admire all the content creators who essentially get to go to an event and not only play their games but also make content. Like I catch myself constantly not being able to do that. I don't know whether it's or age or I don't know, maybe it's the technology or I have no idea. But essentially, when I go to an event, I get so focused and wound up with the game that and there are multiple occasions to actually take out a phone and make a photo. I just keep forgetting about it because I'm so into it. So yeah, kudos to all the other content creators who manage that. We not so much, but
Yeah,
yeah,
it's a lot harder than it looks when you try to do it.
yeah.
Weirdly so.
I remember a couple of years ago, someone told me, "Oh, content creating is not a real job. It's just whimsical and so on and so on." With time, I learned to appreciate it. Like it is a tough nut to crack. It is actually time absorbing. You need to have proper skills to do it. It's not an easy piece of bread. So yeah, my admiration goes to all the content creators, 40k wise, because they are all doing an amazing job, and the hobby is in the best place in the world. Um, Today we actually wanted to talk about we were trying to come up with an idea for an episode a couple of days ago, and the initial idea for the episode was let's talk about conduct, let's talk about behavior at the table, and this was supposed to be inspired by the events at the LVO. But first of all, we weren't there. Second of all, uh, I guess we could summarize the episode in one sentence. If a hobby celebrity gives you time because you used up all your time because you're bad at time management, when you used that time and he uses up his time, don't be a dick and tell him that he's clocked. And that sums up the episode. I guess, there, we've done it in less than a minute. So we decided not to do an episode like that. Instead, we are going to talk about something else. Joker has just been to an event. I have just been to a way smaller, but still an event. And I think what is it? 23rd January, as we are recording this. So in about 3 weeks, we are going to be traveling to Toruń in Poland, to a city not so far away from us, a 2-hour drive, to a GT. For me, this is going to be, and I don't know, Joker, if you realize this, it's going to be my first out of town GT in 2 years' time. Like, I haven't been to a different city to play for 2 years. I've been in a different city for 40k, but that was a year ago. That was the LGT, not in 2024, but in 2023. And within the last 2 years, I haven't been to a GT. And to be perfectly honest, I'm nervous as hell. I didn't think it would come to this, but I'm actually anxious about my list, about what I am going to bring, how to build that list, what should be in it, especially that with the Grotness detachments, with custodies, there are possibilities. We're not just limited to one, but to two. But still, how many dreadnoughts, and so on and so on and so on. So since Joker has been so
How
successful at
many
the
dreadnoughts?
how many dreadnoughts? I
That
mean,
is the question.
it's a genuine question. Laugh if
To
all you want.
dreadnought or to not dread or not to dreadnought.
Exactly. That's why I have a nickname in. If anyone can see that on the screen, I am Tweak the Dreadnought today. But no, I've been to
Nice.
an event where apart from like two Caladiuses, I took only Dreadnoughts, just for shits and giggles, and it actually did quite well. And now I'm at a loss whether I should play more infantry or mass Dreadnoughts or Dreadnoughts with infantry. Three Hellbrute.
Yeah,
Okay.
your
uh,
round one opponent is
My round
throwing a
one
glove
opponent.
at you
So
right now.
fun fact that people from outside of Poland might not know, and I don't think it's a practice that is cultivated anywhere else. But in Poland, there is a tradition that when you go to an event, there is a possibility to challenge someone. Like if you, some people do it to secure like easier games or something. I do it because Nibla, who just commented in the
Or
chat,
harder.
well, yeah, I do it. I usually challenge harder opponents, like people from Team Poland or something like that, and then I end up like in the lower echelons of the roster, but it's all for learning and good fun and so on. So I challenged Nibla because Nibla has been a friend of the podcast for I don't know how long, 2 3 years. He borrowed his models to me when I was traveling to LGT to play at the LGT 2 years ago. So we have a history, but we've actually never met. We've actually never stood at a table together. So I figured out, okay, let's use the tradition that exists to at least meet one another face to face. And I hear that I'm going to die of like liver exhaustion and so on because there's going to be a lot of drinking. So we shall see. But it doesn't change the fact that I still don't know what to bring. Uh, and since Joker has been to an event last weekend and he's been quite successful at that event, according, well, at least to my standards, he's been very successful. I thought that it might be a good idea to just have a chat around list building, what to focus on, because I was never taught anything about this game. Like I learned everything myself. Probably that is why I am where I am, skill wise. But I've never like I've seen people, make lists. I listened to Art of War and stuff explaining how they build lists and so on and so on. I've seen people move minis around the table, etc. But essentially I figured I had to figure out everything on my own, and I thought that it might be a good idea to just bounce ideas against one another with Joker and to see whether Joker maybe has a different philosophy of list building. And uh, while doing that, I think it's an organic way for me to get better, and it's also a way to get interesting content from someone who is way better at the game than myself. So I think without further ado, after this lengthy introduction, Joker.
Putting the pressure on me there, buddy.
Not at all. Not at all. I think that's in a moment we'll hear what I'm talking about. So last weekend you went to an international event. So this wasn't an event in Poland; it was an event in Holland, or as some call it, the Netherlands. Um, how did it happen that you went over there and not somewhere else, not Germany, not a part of Poland, but the Netherlands?
Well, so first of all, when traveling to an event like that, the important thing is how much the flight costs and whether you can get there without any layovers, at least to me, as I like being in new places. I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of the journey there.
Of getting there, yeah.
So yeah. So if I can get there quick, I'm happy with that. And I could get there quick, so that's nice. The Netherlands is one of the few places you can actually get a direct flight from Gdańsk, so our closest airport. So that's an argument. And then after the event was announced, I saw it on in the WTC Discord. I made the mistake of asking Dino about it, and he's been nagging me a couple of times. Come on, buddy, you have to make it. It's going to be so fun.
He can be very convincing.
Yeah. So that's pretty much the whole story. It's not as exciting as one might have thought it will be, but there I was, shall I say?
No, come on. Traveling and getting to events is always exciting. So I'm happy
I
that we're
mean,
doing
it
this.
has it has been like sort of a goal for me this year, or it is actually, because the year's only just started to, go and play somewhere internationally. I mean, we've been to international events, but not playing,
The
or should I
levels of
say, events
jealousy were
abroad.
reaching its peak.
Yes, yes, exactly. So yeah, that's pretty much the story behind this
Awesome.
trip.
Awesome. Living the dream. And the New Year resolutions. This is fantastic. So, all right. So, I think we don't have to like make it too long. We can just say that you went 3-2 and you finished up 17th at the event.
19th, 19th.
Okay, 19th. Oh, fine. So 19th out of how many?
71 people, I
Yeah,
think.
that's a great result. Like I wish I could achieve something like that at an event of that grandeur. So um, I wanted to ask, when you were going to that event, you took GSC. I know you've been
Yes.
playing GSC for a while. We've been duking it out on TTS several times, and every single time, I think every single time you won. So it felt like you were well prepared. Um, but what was the whole concept of the list that you brought? Did you net list it? Did you trial and error and work out something on your own? Did you try to adjust to the Dutch meta somehow? What was the thinking process behind it?
Well, I wouldn't say I've specifically net listed, but then I haven't come up with anything out of the ordinary either. I think biosanctic lists are fairly much solved at this point. The only last minute change I made was exchange the metamorph blob for a blob of acolyte hybrids with the heavy melee weapons.
Hmm.
And in hindsight, they've worked out phenomenally. So
Okay.
I'm quite happy. I was happy with that unit. Um, yeah, but that's pretty much it in terms of any spice in terms of the
Hmm.
list. So other than that, it's been the usual. So triple aberrants with abominants, triple gene stealers, one big blob with the patriarch with the enhancement that gives you +1 AP +1 damage. And then what I might not usually have done if I was doing another Teams event is I maxed out well, not maxed out, but I had 4 Ridge Runners with mining lasers in addition to the one with the mortar that you always take in GSC
For
lists.
extra AP.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
exactly. And the reasoning behind that was I wanted to, at least the thinking behind it was to improve my chances against Slanesh, the Legion of Excess, as that felt really rough going in hand-to-hand combat against that, as the -1 to hit really hinders the output that the aberrants can do. So on average, even when charging, you won't be killing a Keeper of Secrets, for example. You might also struggle into a big Fiend block.
Hmm.
So a 6-man unit, especially if they activate Thieves of Pain, it's just, well, a pain. Yeah, so that was the idea behind it. If I
Okay.
made any others, then last when I found out who my round 1 opponent was, I did have a little bit of a chat with my son to try figure out the best approach to the game, and only then did I realize that actually taking the Primus into the list, which I wouldn't have taken if I didn't take the Acolyte hybrid blob, because you can't attach 2 characters to the metamorphs,
Hmm.
also gave me this additional tech piece of sorts that if I won the roll-off for deployment, I could just string out the 10-man gene stealers and block off almost the entire table from the opposition infiltrate. And then with the Primus's ability, just reposition them to a safe ruin where they would run out and attack something. Um, yeah, so that's pretty much now. It's really all I've got to say in terms of
Mm.
the nuances of the list.
Yeah, sounds like a nifty little toolkit that has answers for everything. So that's exactly my next question. So when you build a list, uh, do you build it to have answers to the, let's say, the most meta prevalent builds, meta bullies, etc., etc.? Or do you focus rather on, I don't know, reading the missions and checking what the missions played at the event are going to be in order to rather play the mission? Because the old Polish philosophy was the opponent cannot score if he's dead. But it seems to me like 10th edition is no longer about that. Or maybe it is. I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something. So which one is it?
Oh, it depends. I think we are in a moment where there are a couple of armies that can outright kill you, and then you will be scoring, obviously. Uh, but for Grotmas, I don't think it was that common. Nevertheless, the way, at least this time around, the way I approached it was trying to identify what are the biggest meta threats, and if I can improve my matchup into them without obviously doing the opposite in terms of the matchups that were already pretty good for me. Hence the addition of Ridge Runners for to give some sort of an attempt to be able to play into Legion of Excess,
Mm-hmm.
as then you might be able to pick up a keeper from distance, although it's always dodgy with the 4-up invuln in the way. And additional feel no pains as well. But they worked pretty well against fiends. I did play Legion of Excess, spoiler alert. They worked pretty well into possessed as well. So it was an okay choice at the end of the day. Yeah, at
Mm-hmm.
least I think so. Where was I going with this? What was the question again? Yeah, no,
Well,
okay, I remembered.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that was really the thinking behind list building here. Now usually when I start building a list, I like to just click on stuff that I like or think is good. I
Mm-hmm.
usually end up at 3,000 points at that point, and then I need
I
to
know the pain.
decide which thing do I need, which thing can I or should I cut down.
Mm-hmm.
And it's quite hard trying to find the balance between the damage output, the screening units slash
Yeah,
trading
utility.
pieces
Mm-hmm.
that you need to have in your list to be able to score early without exposing your most valuable assets. And yeah, that's pretty much the challenge of list
Mm-hmm.
building, I think.
Okay. So let's start from like this is exactly where I wanted to get. So you start building your list, you put in the things that you like. So your heart speaks, but then the mind wakes up and says, wait, no. Let's revisit. So you go into that list again, and then let's start with maybe scoring units. What are nowadays the characteristic of a good scoring unit? I understand that GSC has plenty of those good examples, but if we try to generalize, yeah, okay, I see that for people who are not watching on YouTube, Joker has just sort of shook his head in denial, or however you call it. So maybe GSC doesn't have them then, but maybe you can explain why. What are the characteristics of a good scoring unit, and what should people look for in um, the units that they bring to be able to play the mission well?
Well, you need high OC.
Hmm.
You want that unit to be not dying to a stiff breeze.
Hmm.
That's always an added value. You want that unit to be cheap, and you want that unit to be quite mobile. So those are like that's 4 requirements. That's actually quite
Hmm.
a lot if if you think about it that way. But I think those are the most important characteristics that you want to look at, and then you might want to add if it's a unit that is able to push off a similar unit from an objective.
Hmm.
So similar value. If it can it punch upwards, or
Or
is
out
it
OC or something.
yeah, or is it highly probable that it will be a victim of someone else punching upwards? Then it's
Hmm.
probably not necessarily worth taking.
Hmm. All right. So, like, looking across the entire like army universe, what units immediately come to your mind in terms of like a good mission unit, objective scoring unit, or secondary completing unit?
Well, you've
Something
got
that you're jealous of, maybe.
right, something that I'm jealous of. I'm not sure, but definitely Chaos Space Marine Legionaries are a good unit to do this. They might not be the fastest, but they're usually riding around in rhinos that increase
Hmm.
their mobility. You've got wound rerolls on an objective, so it's like they're created for it. You've got OC2 on the model, so that's also fine. But I also think that was maybe on the expensive side, but if you're playing Custodes Shield Host, I think Venetaria phenomenal to be doing that. You've also got OC2, and they can do quite a lot of damage to unsuspecting targets, and they're not that expensive in terms of,
165 points
and
is
they're a little expensive
for something
when
that
that,
you want
and
to,
then
do missions with. It
yeah, but
it
it's an
does.
expensive army in general.
Yeah, that's
So
true. That. Yeah.
what else comes to mind? Hmm, Oh, I know the perfect example. Gargoyles.
That
Gargoyles
immediately came
are
to my mind
your,
as well.
yeah,
Hmm.
that's the top. That's the number one pick, right? They could do everything that that was here. I mean, they're fairly cheap. They've got all the mobility. You've got a 10-man unit with OC2 per model. You've got shitloads of movement. You can screen with them. They're fantastic, right? For
Yeah,
example.
and they
What
have a
else?
footprint, so they take up a piece of the board. Like if you want to push something away, as you said, screen stuff like that. It's an
Yep.
amazing and can be a throwaway unit because again, the cost isn't overwhelming. So uh, all points ticked, so to say.
Yep. Exactly.
Mm.
Right. I can't really think of anything else right now. Yeah, I mean, I'm limited to the stuff I consider most often, so lists I try building. In terms of other things in the
I don't know,
meta, I'm
scouts, Space Marine scouts,
verging
or
mad.
even like infiltrators, intercessors, but scouts specifically because they infiltrate, they have scout move, so you can play them aggressively, or deploy them aggressively and then just run away. Same goes for, I guess, Pathfinders uh, in Tau. Like this is a unit that I so wish I had in Custodes. Something that you can just put forward and then move them back with the recon drone or something like this. This is one of the best units for that purpose, I think. And also like what do you call them, Vespid, which again aren't that expensive, but you can move them around, you can uppy downy them. Perfect action monkeys, in my opinion. So even stealth suits, because they are also not that expensive and they infiltrate, they can walk around and they can punch up. So
Hmm.
all right, so we know what the good scoring units can be. Now again, going back to list building, um, when you think of mm, damage in your army composition, are there any specific profiles that you take or that you look for in the army? Like, I don't know. Um, I can tell you. So recently, I've been considering going to a local event, and knowing what my local meta is, I know that there are multiple armies and multiple players around who sport a lot of 3-wound bodies in their armies. There is a bloke, a very good one, who runs like 3 blobs of chosen and the sorry, 3 blobs of possessed and the blob of chosen. There are at least 2 people who play GSC with aberrations and an abominant. There are people who bring like shitloads of space marines with, Victrix Guard or whatever you call all those companions and bullshit, that are 3 wounds usually as well. So my initial thought was, it might be a good idea to bring a lot of stuff that does damage 3 or even at times damage 4 to easily kill that. But is it the right way of approaching list building? Like, should I focus on what the meta might bring and then try to counter it, or am I focusing on the damage too much and too little on the game and the tactics?
No, I think 100%. You need to account what are the most common profiles you're going to run into and how you can optimally deal with them, right? So you have access to damage free. That could be a good idea, but is it reliable damage free? And I'm asking this again because obviously you've got Custodies in your mind. You've got damage
Hmm.
free with on an AP1 weapon, which might be a bit
I
at
mean,
times, right?
after having a proper look, I started thinking about two things: either shield host and then characters with damage three hidden in units of resilient stuff. So Trajan,
Mhm.
who is strength 10, AP 2 damage three. The blade champion, that is at times strength 6, AP 3 damage 3, only 5 attacks, but then sustain and so on and so on. And then in Solar Spearhead, there are all the dreadnoughts, and all the dreadnoughts, albeit with 5 attacks, they are like strength 12, AP 2, damage 3, or something like that. That's why I wanted to bring so many of them to
Mhm.
counter, you know, that stuff. Um, but I am afraid I'm focusing on that a little bit too much, and then suddenly out of nowhere, orcs, and suddenly I don't have enough to deal with a horde, and what to
Well,
do then?
that's kind of the problem, right? You can't rebuild a list suited for everything. You're always so you need to look at the I don't know, list of players, the faction spread. Oh, maybe not. You will have the faction spread once the list is in. But for local events, you usually know what people are
Who's
bringing.
bringing what? Yeah.
Yeah, if you see a name pop up, then you know this army X is showing up, right?
Hmm.
Most often. So you just need to account for that, right? If and worst case scenario, if there's like 10 people and only one of them's bringing a horde army, just have to take the risk.
Okay. So when
Because,
you
like I
build
said, you're really not going to be able to build for all comers
everything, yeah.
because the meta is so diverse. But if you've got the tools, you should definitely try and do that, right?
Okay.
So yeah, that's that.
All right.
And whilst the dreadnoughts might seem good, it's only 5 attacks, so you don't only want the damage characteristic, you kind of need to look at all of the characteristics of the
Hmm.
weapon, so number of attacks as well.
Yep.
And like I said, the AP, right? Because if you've got like AP1 and you run up against something with a 2-up save and armor of contempt, you're not gonna get through
You're
that
not gonna have a good
defensive
time.
too
Yeah.
much too
Yeah,
often.
absolutely. That's one of the reasons why Alaris are not on the list. Although I did the math and I did some crazy amount of rolling on TTS just to check, and on average, it looks like a unit of Alaris kills a unit of Possessed with ease. But what then? They 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 are just left in the field, open to eat up, shooting from all over the place. So yeah, there are those trade-offs, I guess. But Alaris are just a wee bit too expensive to justify bringing them, I think. Anyway, um, when we come back to your GSC list, for example, um, when you build a list, are there like do you keep in your mind any lists or any matchups that you're specifically afraid of? And does that affect your list building? Or do you do everything to remain as universal with your army as possible?
No, it's like I said in the beginning. If I can do something about it, try improve a certain matchup that's not looking very well,
Hmm.
then it's always worth considering. But you always also have to keep on your mind if it's not going to hinder your other matchups, the good ones. If it's bringing them down to a well, for a singles event, even a risk of going to a draw, because it's one VP difference makes a win or lose.
Hmm.
So you don't want to be like you don't want to get into the draw area too much. What we'd call between 8 or 12 points when playing teams. So yeah, and I've mentioned that. So I was thinking of Legion of Excess because I've had a test game into it. It went pretty bad. So what can I do to improve this matchup? If I take those Ridge Runners that don't suffer the -1 to hit penalty because they only applies in melee, how does that affect my other potential hard matchups or the good matchups.
Hmm. Okay. And are there any? I mean, you did mention Slanesh, so
I did.
that was something that you were bracing for or preparing for. But maybe I'll make this question a little bit more broad and general. What is the meta right now? So, like, when you build a list, do you take into consideration that you might face a lot of armor? Like, I don't know, guard, although guard will probably be a problem in a moment when the codex drops, not yet. But still, there are space marines with a lot of armor, a lot of tanks, vindicators, executioners, dreadnoughts, even, etc., etc. Is it hordes because orcs suddenly out of nowhere are quite strong with their new Grotmus detachment? Uh, what is the meta right now? What do you build against?
Well, I'm gonna repeat myself.
Mhm,
It's anything and everything currently. I think it's a bit too early to be able to like say that the meta is resolved. I think it's far from it. And with the number of releases we're now getting, Guard was only up for pre-order. Helda already are.
mhm,
Uh, the day after tomorrow, so it's going to be really hard to keep up. And for the next couple of months, or the like 2 3 months, is going to be shifting very quickly.
mhm,
Uh, so I think you really kind of have to try building an all-comers list, even though I just said it's going to be near impossible, and just try to identify the matchups that you think will come up often and how do you deal with them. So I was expecting Legion of Excess, and I've tried to kit towards it a little bit. I was expecting a lot more Grey Knights, and that's just can't do anything about that, really. Although maybe on a good table, the new detachment has a lot bigger damage output, but a lot less of the defensive tricks, the movement tricks. So maybe I would have stood a chance there, but I don't think so. Because still all 2-up armor, which
mhm,
is hard for GSC. And I was expecting orcs, which again I don't have that many reps into, so I couldn't really, figure it out.
mhm,
Those were the three, I'd say, most oppressive meta predators I was expecting. Then you've obviously got guard. GSC into guard is can be okay-ish, can be even good in the hands of the right pilot. So I didn't really think too much about that one,
okay,
as it was like, well, okay, it is what it is.
okay. And out of sheer curiosity, what armies did you face?
So I played Blood Angels round one,
Hmm.
although I was supposed to play Votan, but my opponent dropped at the last minute.
Okay.
Uh,
Which one was the preferable one in the end?
Blood Angels were the
Okay.
preferable one. Votan was very much a flip. At best, it wasn't looking good.
Hmm.
Then I played Legion of Excess, so it was a good thing that I took those Ridge Runners to be able to attack them at distance. And my opponent was the only Legion of Excess player that bought Be'lakor, so I couldn't shoot them.
Of
Fantastic.
course. Of course.
Yeah, so unfortunately I lost that game. I then played into Creations of Bile. That was the most crazy game of the event, and I was very happy about it because I got to play Florian from the Dutch team.
Hmm.
So it was, it was interesting. It was a skill-intensive game, and unfortunately, I ran out of assets towards the end of the game, and yeah, took the loss. I think, in hindsight, that he got the best possible buff combination,
Hmm.
or almost best, because he got +1 toughness, which meant that instead of wounding the possessed on 2s and 4s, sorry, on 2s and 3s with the majority of my profiles, so aberrants and the ridge runners and abominants, I was suddenly wounding them on 3s and 4s,
Hmm. Yeah.
which coupled with the access to a -1 to hit from strat made dealing with them a lot more annoying. Had he not got that, I would have been able to clear through them earlier, and maybe I would have the resources to deal with the Chosen that then mopped up the rest of my pieces. But it is what it is. So
No
I
shame in
was,
that, I would say.
yeah. I mean, and the game was great because, well, I misplayed a lot the 10-man Gene Steer unit, but across the tournament in general.
Okay.
Uh, and I've put them a little bit too much forward, maybe. So they got charged turn one, but Florian made such long charge that an aberrant unit from my deployment zone could then heroically intervene, which they did. They rolled too much on the charge as well, so they went like to the back of the possessed.
Mm,
So then he decided to just roll an 11-inch charge with legionaries with some random lord, and he
skill.
made it as well. So turn one, we had 4 units in combat in the middle of the board, and
Sweet.
yeah, I mean the game took like 3 hours. We probably spent 2.5 of it in fight phases. Was
That's
such a
cool.
brawl. Yeah, and it was going really well for me at the beginning. Like I was cheering for the possessed at an okay-ish tempo, but then I ran out of steam, so I was a bit bummed about at the end of the day. Especially that was the second loss, and I was really hoping I can do a 4-1, but that was out of the picture. So then the Sunday morning I played Tau. I thought it was too many crisis suits, but yeah, I think my opponent might have played it maybe a bit too clogged up together, his entire army,
Mm,
and yeah, there just was a moment where I could do a bigger push, and I was able to, like, deal enough damage at that point to then run away with the score. And the last game was against Sisters. Sisters are in a relatively bad place right now. They've got so little on the board. It's scary.
hmm
Although it did end as only a 6-point difference, so could have slipped away.
hmm
But fortunately, it didn't. So yeah, I did end on 3-2, like you said before. I've scored enough points to be one of the higher placed 3-2 players, and finished in the top 20, which was like, oh, okay, I can accept that.
the acceptable minimum.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Because
Okay.
I think places between 15 and 32nd were on 3-2, so that's quite a lot of people in the bracket
Yeah, that's a spread.
already.
All right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
So
I think
kudos.
that's
Well
it.
done. Congratulations. Really.
Thank
Like
you.
I'm
Thank
actually
you.
envious. And very good players at that event from what I've seen. So nothing to scoff at.
Yeah,
Um,
that was also like the fun thing, the thing I was happy about in regards to the event. They really had like all of their top players there. So the chances of running into one of them are high. Sometimes the Polish singles don't have too many of the national team level
mhm.
players attending. Yeah, so that was really cool. And we also had uh, simulation of bar popular in the evening. So like a lot of the attendees went to the same bar. So beers were had, burgers were eaten. We've had some Warhammer chats, and yeah, it was overall a pretty fun weekend.
Good stuff. The best of stuff, actually. Okay.
What
Now I'm jealous
about
more.
the RTT you went to? Because you've tried a stat checky list as
Oh
much as
yeah,
you
yeah, I did.
can, I guess, build with Custodes. So, yeah, how did that work out for you?
I mean, first of all, I had amazing fun. The dreads are amazing, but I did yet again. I did, or I made a mistake um, of playing it by the heart and not by the brains. So I had like I don't know 5 lists at hand when I was sort of training before that event. Every single one different. Um, and then 2 days before, or sorry, one day before the list upload deadline, I decided that I don't know, I watched something on YouTube with like a lot of dreadnoughts or something, and I was like, that seems to work. I'm gonna do that. So I threw all of my like training into the garbage, and I just went with a random dreadnought list that wasn't trialed and tested. And it bit me in the ass in the first game. I was playing against Wujek, so the guy we both know, this young prodigy on the Pomeranian scene, so the north of Poland scene, who's been very, very successful with his Ultramarines list, with Kalgar, with what's his name, Gilliman, two Vindicators, an Executioner, a that other tank that is like Reaper, oh, Gladiator Reaper, and then some action monkeys and so on. This is the second time, I think, the second time that I've played him, because we also played on TTS, and I
Mhm.
sort of knew that this isn't a good matchup for me. Although I had no experience with the Dreadnoughts, so but previously when we played, he essentially mowed through me. So I was hoping that the Dreadnoughts would do better, and probably if I had tested the list before, they would have. But
Mhm.
not knowing what the dreadnoughts, especially the Achilles and the Galatus, are capable of, because I had one Galatus with the I had no infantry, aside from 3 units of prosecutors for doing missions. I only had 2 tanks, the Caladises, the dreadnoughts, and the Calidus assassin. So 2 Achilleses, one Galatus, 2 Telemons, and t- 2 venerable dreadnoughts. So essentially 4 venerable dreadnoughts because they stand up. So yeah, they just weren't enough. But I misplayed a couple of times. Like I placed the dreadnoughts into a place, or like I piled in, or consolidated the assassin into the Calgar's unit to sort of stretch them and hope that they wouldn't make it to the dreadnought, but they did, etc. So some miscalculations and so on. If we played this again, same mission, same table, same everything, I think it would have gone much better. Uh, but it is what it is.
Mhm.
So that was like a 19-1 score at the end. Then I got to play against Librarius Conclave, so the new Grotmus detachment from Space Marines, which was amazing. And I really wanted to play against that because I've heard so much about it.
Mhm.
The Stern Guard with the potential to put out 24 mortal wounds in one shooting phase, which happened. So that's insane. That's actually stupid. The only downside, but the major downside of that is that once they do it, they just stand there and they're
Mhm.
not going anywhere. So essentially, yeah, it backfired. So he killed a dreadnought of mine, but then he got killed in turn. And yeah, the player was also testing the list, like it was his second game or something like that. He was a great guy, and it was fun, but it got pretty one-sided at some point. So that was a high score for me. And then the last game was brilliant because it was against Chaos Demons, but not the Grotmas detachment. It was the original Demons detachment. There was
Mhm.
a lot, so 4 big demons, I think: Bloodthirster, the ugly one, no, the ugly one. What's his name?
Yeah, the great ugly one.
The sorry,
Think it's good.
the
Think
great
it's good.
the great unclean one, the Keeper of Secrets, and Bellicor. And then there was like a unit of blue horrors, a unit of um, plague bearers, a unit of um, bloodletters with the bloodthirster and so on. And it was the ritual. So
Mhm.
like I've played the ritual so much with you and with other people that I just know how to play it, and I took advantage of the fact that my opponent didn't, because it is quite an uncommon mission even in our like even in the national tournaments, but in the local ones specifically. So
Yeah,
I
it
just
really pops up as people treat it as boring.
yeah. So but that was an advantage that I had, that I had a lot of experience on it. So I
Mhm.
just spammed my side of the table with the objectives. It seemed like my opponent forgot even about doing it. So he had
Mm-hmm.
fewer. So it automatically meant that I was scoring more on primary. And then he played it like very safe, knowing that I have those two tanks and all the dreadnoughts shoot and they pack a punch. So after the game we realized that he actually attacked me on turn two, but it did feel like as if he was taking his time and he
Mm-hmm.
only came to me in turn three. But then when he did, the stat check kicked in. So this was exactly what I was looking for. The bloodthirsters didn't even get to hit me. The bloodletters charged in, didn't do anything, and because the dreadnoughts are just too resilient, and he rolled poorly on wounding.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and again, it ended up in a high score for me due to both the primary mission working out for me. Secondaries, not so much. In none of the games, the cards went my way. But then, yeah, the old truth that you don't score if you're dead uh, came into play. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it was a 2-1. It was only a three-game event, the typical RTT. But I was happy with going 2-1. And I wish I could play that Ultramarines game again, just to prove something to myself. But maybe, on TTS one day. So it was, yeah, really cool.
Yeah, so when you say the secondary scoring didn't go too well, why was that? So did you lack the mission play units? Did you because in free games it doesn't sound like it's just poor card draws each and every time.
It did feel so. It did feel like it was poor card
Oh,
rolls.
it always does.
Yeah, but so the list, uh, when I was building it, and that's what I do, and I guess this ties in with a question that I wanted to ask at some point, like how much do you focus on specific secondaries? So, like, when you plan your list, do you focus on, oh, how am I going to do containment if it pops up, or how am I going to do area denial if it happens early, or something like that? So I will leave that question for like a moment. But I've built the list with three scoring units. So the three units of prosecutors, OC2, four girls with three up save, three up feel no pain against mortals and psychic attacks, two OC, most importantly.
Hmm.
And also the two Contemptor Dreads are essentially a unit that I push forward because maybe they are not throwaway, but you can risk them. And even if they die in someone's shooting, because it is highly probable that they will not get engaged in combat in the first turn, even if they die in shooting, they respawn. They potentially can respawn on the objective and still hold it until turn two.
Hmm.
So those were my scoring units, and obviously the tanks in the back to just cover a little bit of an objective, but still to be able to shoot. Um, and then the objectives, the missions that came, I think they were quite unfortunate because in every single game, I started with something like engagement, for example. Sorry, engage on all fronts.
Hmm.
So you cannot really discard it. You cannot swap it for anything else unless you do it for a CP. And I think in 2 out of 3 games, that was one of the first objectives that I drew or
Okay.
had drawn. The other one was not extend, but the one that you have to do in the middle. I can't remember exactly, but most of them were like, even if I can score them, it's the bottom version of them. Like one
Hmm.
of those objectives where you can
Yeah,
score
yeah, yeah.
5 if you do something and 2 if you
Hmm.
do less of it. So
Yep.
usually it was like that. So, but I do feel like with custodies, it's just difficult to have good action monkeys because the ladies, I love them. I played against Date yesterday and his Tyranids, and my Witch Seekers held up a Pyrovore and a Tyrannofex
Hmm.
for two turns, making them unable to shoot anything else than themselves, which was fantastic. But uh, it just feels like 3 units of girls are not enough, especially that they don't do anything special. Sorry, Witch Seekers do scout, but it's really the infiltration that you want to do good missions, and you don't want to waste Kalida's assassin to put her somewhere on the table only to lose her really quickly. So this is something that I struggle with, and that's why I wanted to ask you about, yeah, your concept of those secondaries. I'll ask openly, how much time do we have? Um, will we have the
I got
time for you?
like 5 minutes.
All right, so let's just focus on that question and we can close with this one. So when you build your list, do you focus on specific missions like containment, area denial, and how to approach them, or do you just go happy go lucky and that you know that with that many units that you bring as GSC, you will be able to score it one way or another anyway?
I probably should focus more on that because you don't. In ninth, I probably would have done it differently, right? Because then you would have picked secondaries and you'd build towards being able to score them consistently. If you'd play fixed, you'd also might want to do that. So we've had that period of time in 10th that you'd most often play homers and something.
Hmm.
So you had to have the mission monkey. You had to have something that is able to, come in from deep strike, preferably into the opponent's deployment zone. So it's something small, and you'd account for that. I think
Hmm.
nowadays, when playing tactical, you kind of need to be able to build a list that can adapt. So you just need a higher amount of units to be able, preferably, to be able to either, give up a unit for a good amount of points, so gain
Hmm.
the higher end on a given card, uh, but also to be able, but more importantly, you kind of need to keep all those things in mind during deployment.
Hmm.
So well, it's a mix of both, because obviously on some maps you might not be able to do containment turn one because of your movement being a
Yep.
little bit on the lower end
Hmm.
of the spectrum. But other than that, if you have the so yeah, okay. I'm rethinking my answer as I'm saying it, so
Oh,
that's
this is
it's
actually
a little bit confusing.
I also know that you're rushing because we need to finish in a moment, which is fine. But to our listeners or anyone who is listening, I had an idea that maybe we should do like a TTS session for our next episode, unless there is a tournament that we need to talk about. But if not, we could do a TTS session in which we would just open up TTS and go through deployment and deploy our armies. So Custodes versus GSC or Custodes versus CSM or whichever you want to play. And then if you could we could walk ourselves through our thinking process of why we deployed this and for what purpose and so on. Perhaps that could be an interesting episode. And yeah, uh, do let us know in the chat if there is any specific mission, any specific layout, any specific army that you would like us to consider, and maybe we can put this down on a virtual table for the next episode.
Yeah,
But
we can try. I mean, it's something that I would watch because I don't think I'm good at deployment. That's probably the moment I make the biggest number of mistakes, and then
we
I
can
try to
always invite
recover
someone to do that. So
from
yeah.
them all game. But yeah, it's definitely a good idea. So guys, let us know if that's something you're interested in. But to answer your question, yes, you definitely should consider if you've got enough resources to score the most important cards in the deck when they show up. So you've got your containment, you've got your extend, which is relatively easy. You've got your secure, possibly. So that's the stuff you definitely want to be scoring. But again, it's not only your unit choices, you also need to account for it during deployment to be able to actually reach these places on the table. Yeah, to get those points.
Hmm. And last question, really quickly: when you start the game, do you is your tactics immediately to jump on an objective or as many objectives as possible, or do you actually let your opponent jump on objectives, or do you adjust to what your opponent does?
So I used to do that. So I, go with the thinking that okay, I'm gonna go onto as many objectives as I can, and that now makes my opponent have to deal with everything where he might not have the resources. But I think you need to be a bit more cagey and not pursue that approach. Yeah, be able to, either hold the objectives that are safe to hold and just not expose yourself too much, especially during the beginning of the game. So you might want to threat saturate later, but not necessarily at the start, because well, if you're going first, your opponent probably still has his whole army in
Hmm.
his third one, so you are getting a big clapback if you
Yeah.
show up too many of your units. I've had that situation yesterday when I played against Starshatter Necrons. I went for a big cleanse. I shouldn't have done that. I should have just either done it on one objective, which was fairly safe, or just discarded it completely.
Hmm.
Even though you look at the card, it's 4 points. You're able to score it because you're going first. You've got fast units, and the opponent isn't on any of the objectives. But it's a bit of trap, and so is, for example, established locus.
Hmm.
In my opinion, at least, when you're doing it in the middle.
Yeah, so you always need
Um,
to ask yourself the question whether it's worth to sacrifice a unit for those 2 points or for those 3 points or something like that.
yep. And again, I feel like I've digressed.
A
What
wee
was
bit.
the question?
It seems like a theme with you. Um,
Yeah.
uh, it was, yeah. Do you focus on the on specific missions when you, or no, sorry, do you jump on the objectives immediately? Uh,
Okay. So
mhm.
probably not. There's like yeah, because there's so many factors, right? Your opponent could also get overwhelming force, for example, storm hostile. You kind of don't want to be putting yourself in a situation score that easy.
Oh, by the way, that
Uh,
was the one that I think I started with in 1 or 2 games on Sunday. I drew Storm Hostile or the other one, Overwhelming Force, turn one, when
you
you
can
only have.
redraw storm hostile, so
So
that's not an
it was the
issue.
other
So
one. It was the one
that's
that
the
you
thing, yeah.
cannot. So
Hmm.
Overwhelming Force, and when you draw that turn one, and the only objective that comes into play is the home objective of your opponent. mm, that's a shitty situation.
It is unlucky, but
Yeah.
what can you do?
Yeah, do be like that sometimes. Anyway, everyone, we agreed with Joker that today we're going to finish a little bit earlier. There are some family commitments on both of our ends, so I think that is best that we put a dot here. Again, for the next episode, the concept is that we do some demonstration of deployment. We might invite someone to do that for us, or we might do it ourselves. One way or another, let us know if there is any specific mission, any specific deployment, any specific army that you would like to see us do it with. Let us know if you have any questions or questions to our potential guest that we might want to ask and get answered. Um, do check out our sponsors. So do check out the Army Painter and Weyland-Yutani. So either painting stuff or terrain stuff. And then also do check out our Patreon because we try to do this on a regular basis. We do intend to do some battle reports and so on. Hardware is always helpful and we need to buy it, or we have already bought it. I don't even know what the status is right now, but Patreon is always useful. So do check out this bit as well. And did I forget about anything?
I don't think you did. You've done a good job. Although you did say that if you enjoy the content that we do, please like, subscribe, hit the bell button, and all that jazz.
Yeah, we're not dancing on TikTok, so this is the best you're gonna get. Do like it; it's gonna help us with our ranges. With that, thank you everyone for watching. Thank you for listening. If you're consuming this on Spotify or any other podcast aggregator, and we'll be back next week on Thursday with some more content for you. Thanks, everyone. See you next time.
Bye bye.